generation.
I made
you have a choice.
the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
And I
that woman.
realized that this was something he isn't
We're not going to be
hearing.
able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
And this is Steve Hickson with Franklin Chansey and John Stanberry. Welcome to another edition of Backfire.
Good morning. Radio voice.
That's right. I got my radio voice on this morning. Well, it's been a wonderful week, hasn't it?
Well, it hadn't been quiet, that's for sure.
I was talking about the weather.
That's what I thought you meant.
I don't know. You know, I'm kind of in and out of the news cycle right now, so in the summer. So it's, you know, I have to kind of just.
Are you saying that your winter retirement will be different from your summer retirement?
Yeah. My winter retirement will be different from my summer.
We'll wait to see.
Anyway, sounds like a lot's been going on with the sheriff this week. Chattanooga Times and the sheriff are having it out, it looks like. What else has been going on?
With the sheriff?
Yeah. Well, anything you want to talk about?
Well, I think that the sheriff has been very happy for Donald Trump's election this week, which has sort of drowned everything else out.
Oh, so you think Trump's making more noise than Sheriff Watson is?
In this particular week, I would have to say yes.
I don't know.
Which is quite an accomplishment.
Well, the sheriff is saying no, and the Times is saying yes. So I guess when will we all no?
Well, this one's a little different. There's video for this one, so that's part of the issue.
What is tell me what's happened, because I really haven't been keeping up. What's the video?
Well, it appears that a individual had failed to appear in court who was on a bond that had been made by the company Mrs. Watson works for. That the sheriff got a couple of other deputies and the bondsman, including Mrs. Watson, to go with him, searching for this person on.
He gathered a posse up.
Yeah, on this past Easter, and then as a part of that, drove down into Georgia.
Now, that's not a fair characterization. I
wasn't finished with the
I know, but my point is, drove down into Georgia indicates, we'll just cross the state line looking for him. They thought they had him, and they thought he was running, and they did chase someone across the state line.
Okay.
In that process, they found a vehicle. I don't know that it was necessarily the vehicle they were looking for, but for some reason they concluded that was perhaps related. And the sheriff pulled somebody over in Georgia and removed them from the car at gunpoint. Per the video, the individuals, it turned out, had nothing to do with this case. And so that raises a number of issues in the state of Georgia rather than here locally. Which I assume those folks will address in some fashion.
Let me, and look, I'm not picking sides here, but let me add a little nuance to this.
All right.
The car, they had several deputies involved looking for this gentleman. This car
they formed a posse, right?
Well, I mean, they do this. You have some other questions that come up. You know, how often do you do it? How do you decide which criminals you do it for and which criminals you don't? But they do this. This is their job, to catch people who don't report to court for their trial dates.
Gotcha.
But anyway, they had several cars there. The car that he ended up chasing into Georgia saw this collection of patrol cars and made a 180 in the middle of the highway and sped off in the other direction. So that's the reason, as I understand it, that they started chasing him. Now, the guy they're looking for does have a pretty bad rap sheet, from what I understand, was charged with pretty serious crimes. And so I think if you have a car make a 180 and speed off and cross the state line, which, as I understand it, they were 500 yards and, a half a mile into the state, They also had already contacted Georgia officials. Everything seems to have actually been followed for the chase. The question really is more, how do you decide who you chase and who you don't? But the Georgia people met them down there. If you got a person that you think is a violent criminal, it turned out not to be the man. Franklin's right about that. But if you think that's who you're getting and he does a 180 and speeds away, when you pull him over, I don't have a problem pulling him out of the car at gunpoint. Now, it turned out to be the wrong person.
Comments, Franklin?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. The sheriff technically has no authority once he crosses the state line.
He is supposed to turn over. When you chase, you can continue the chase until the authorities in that jurisdiction take over.
Right.
They pulled the guy over before the Georgia authorities got there.
Okay.
Well, actually, I think they were over in Georgia before the chase actually started.
I don't know. I do know they had contacted Georgia officials and said, we're after this guy.
So,
I'm going to just put this out there. It was really bad judgment. Whether you think it was anything else wrong or not, it was bad judgment.
Well, Franklin's right in one way. Once you, and this is sort of some of the same stuff that's happening on the federal level with this Russia investigation. If you pile enough people in looking at something and nitpicking every single thing apart, you're going to find something wrong, because things like this, especially when you get into nuances of should you have done this, should you have done that, second guessing and backseat driving are always easier. But having said that, you do need to try and protect yourself. If you know you're being scrutinized, you need to try to be as careful as you can not to make
how did this
mistakes.
come about the Georgia deal?
Somebody clearly reported it.
Who was somebody,
I don't know if it's people inside the department or people in Georgia. I don't know the answer to that one.
Oh, the Times Free Press.
Well, the Georgia,
Well, somebody reported it to the Times Free Press, clearly.
from what I understand, the Georgia officials have not really had much to say. If somebody reported it from down there, I think they'd have comment.
The video was from a Georgia car, so it was obtained, I assume, through a Freedom of Information Act request.
Well, but Franklin, that would also substantiate the idea that the Georgia officials had been called and were responding to the scene, which is actually how that process is supposed to work.
Well, what else has happened in the sheriff's deal? Anything else, or is that it?
That's all I've heard of.
So we're back to him selling some used cars, not in the correct way.
To be honest, nobody knows. From what I understand, the defense hadn't even seen the charges.
Okay.
Within a limited extent, it has more to do, as I understand it, with the paperwork and the reports that you file than the actual selling of the vehicles.
But, for example, when we first started this, everybody was talking about the taxes. I understand all the taxes were paid, and they were all paid appropriately.
Well, were they paid in front of the articles or behind the article?
Well, from what I understand, they can be paid either way. I don't know, but they can be paid in the moment, or they can be paid at the end of the year. From what I understand,
the only thing that we know for sure at this point is that presumably an independent out-of-town district attorney is handling the investigation, that he felt there was enough information to present it to a grand jury of Bradley County citizens. Mm-hmm. They were presented whatever evidence they had, and they felt there was enough evidence for the case to go forward. That's not a finding of guilt.
Right.
In fact, he remains presumed innocent.
Well, in fact,
As
the
he should
DA
be.
did not recommend charges.
Well, I don't know if we know that or not.
Do you think the deal in Georgia came from a police scatter and somebody picked it up that they were down in Georgia?
I don't know. It's possible.
I'm just trying to figure out how something gets this full-blown Chattanooga Times Free Press coverage.
Well, I understand that the family of the gentleman who was ultimately caught has raised some questions about some of the injuries that he sustained from a dog in the case.
Apparently, they turned a dog loose.
And the dog
Bit him.
in his house or where?
No, on the chase inside the road. They used the canine.
Okay, so they did catch the guy.
Oh, yeah, eventually back in Bradley County.
Back in Bradley County.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, part of this, I will have to say, part of this on my part is I have a hard time feeling real sorry for people who are committing crimes.
Yeah, and running and...
You know, I just do. And so, you know, well, you know, the dog bit me. Well, you should have showed up for court.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how this... you know, I've seen what's going on in the presidential race right now with all the slander and everything else, and I just, you know, it seems like it gets one-sided and it just can't stop. So, I don't know. I was trying to see how, in my mind, how that could have gotten out to made the big news, but I guess it was because the bottom line was somebody didn't like it because the sheriff went after one of his wife's bondees.
Well,
Does he?
unusually took the bondsman with them on it. That's not normal procedure at all.
Surprisingly,
wife.
the bondsmen actually have more authority to cross state
Yeah,
lines.
actually,
Well, was the bond person his wife?
yes.
So she
And her employer.
okay. Well, anyway,
I guess a lot of other people thought it was a little odd because, frankly, it wasn't a very large bond. So what the motivation was,
2000.
yeah, what the motivation was to make this something that required the direct involvement of the sheriff, 2 other deputies on Easter Sunday. I don't know. It's just it was unusual. It was unusual that in the video the sheriff was not in a uniform. He was wearing plaid pants and plaid shorts and a polo shirt, which is sort of an odd picture with a gun and somebody being hauled out of a truck on the side of a road. So I don't know.
all right. Well, Watson kind of rebuts the newspaper story. But he didn't give any.
Well, the parts that were presumably not rebuttable are the video. As I understand it, came from a Georgia patrol car, so it was happening in Georgia. And what actually transpired on the camera, you know, you see.
Well, I mean, again, if you're arresting someone, I think gun drawn, get out of the car I'm okay with that.
Right.
And again, the video
If
from
I was a policeman, it'd be tough for me to chase these cars down. I'm telling you.
well, the video in a way backs up again what I said. The way that law works is you pursue him across jurisdictional lines. You've already notified the other jurisdiction, which apparently had happened, and you cut the chase off when the other authorities take over the chase.
Let me ask something. The car did a U-turn.
180 from what I understand.
Turned and went the other way. Mm-hmm. Well, when they started chasing it with police cars with sirens and lights on, did the car voluntarily?
It pulled after it had crossed the state line. It did finally pull over.
Okay. I don't know how far it had to go to get to the state line.
I don't know.
So we don't know how far
They
chased it.
It is very, you know, John uses the term crossing jurisdictional lines. It's different when that jurisdiction is a new state than it is going from Bradley into Polk County. They have a mutual aid agreement that provides for that and how they handle it and so forth. It's a little different when you cross the state line because your legal authority stops. You're not a law enforcement officer in the state of Georgia.
But Franklin,
No,
if
it's
that
not
was
that.
an absolute,
He's no different. He's no different than you or I.
Agree. But the reason you have sort of a concept of how it works is because if that was the case, any county that bordered any other state, the criminals would just say, all I got to do is get to the county line, cross into North Carolina, and I'm home free because they can't set one toe over the line.
That's what they used to do. That's what they used to do.
Frequently happens to this day.
That's what they used to do when they used to run that moonshine.
For example, now, you know, we're talking about this and we're saying, okay, this was a little low. The reason I'm being more defensive of this is not so much based on the sheriff, but it's based on, for example,
Right.
an Amber Alert. If we've got an Amber Alert and a sheriff thinks that child is in a car, you don't want that sheriff going, hey, crossed into Georgia, I got to stop right here on the line.
Right.
You want him to stay on that car until the Georgia officials meet him, which is what the law actually has set up to do. And that's actually what this dash cam more or less confirms. Now, he got to the guy out of his car and got to the guy before the Georgia guy got to the guy. But it was all happening right there. It's not like the Georgia people were chasing him, 10 miles into Georgia. It was less than a mile across the line. And I guess, again, I just don't like the concept. If you criticize this too heavily from the standpoint of how it transpired, you're opening the door for our law enforcement officials to be basically handcuffed in trying to catch people that are doing bad things.
Right. All right. I guess we'll wait and see what happens next with the Watson sheriff report.
Well, I mean, frankly, is there any on this case? There's a story in the Free Press. Is there any indication that there's a crime here or that anything's being investigated about this story, or is it just a damaging story?
As far as I know, the officials in Georgia have not commented on that, so I don't know. That's if there is a criminal element, it would be in the state of Georgia, not here.
Well, I would have a real hard time thinking there's any problem there since they were notified. They did respond. It seems to me like the protocol was actually followed.
I think that's a reasonable position to take, John. But jurisdictions are funny about people coming in there and doing things. It's not nearly as clear-cut as
the
folks
problem
would like to say.
For example, whatever county it is down there, the problem for them fussing is that this works both ways. If they're chasing a Georgia criminal and he crosses into Bradley County, they want to make sure that guy gets caught too.
Right. All right. We'll move on. Polk County Commission just gave a nod to a 12% tax hike. And I'm reading an article. Did come back on municipal projects, paving, widening, and junctions for Bradley County, reducing the city's street paving cycle from 27.5 years to 20 years is one thing they're hoping to do. Sidewalk investment, doubling the city's annual sidewalk investment.
I'm sorry, you lost me. Did you say Polk County's tax rate?
Polk County tax went up 12%.
Oh, okay.
And then I went back to say what Bradley County is doing since their tax hike.
Okay.
No, Cleveland City.
Cleveland City.
I'm sorry, Cleveland City.
The County Commission will fuss about that.
Anyway, I'll go back to Polk County. 12% hike. It amounted to about $20 on a $150,000 home.
Mm-hmm.
What's Bradley County's amount to? Their increase?
You mean Cleveland City?
I mean Cleveland City. I'm sorry.
It's about $115 for
$100,000 worth of home. Yeah,
So
something like that.
Quite a bit higher.
Much higher.
Now then, I'm going to talk about projects that the city of Cleveland has said that they're planning on doing with the money. 27.5 years to 20 years on the street paving.
Mm-hmm.
Doubling the city's annual sidewalk investment.
Let me talk about that sidewalk for a second.
All right.
They won't build a sidewalk on a commercial lot. Now think
They
about
make
that.
the developer do that, right?
Well, no. I mean, my point is duplexes, for example, because you rent those, that's considered commercial. Well, they won't build a sidewalk. So you've got let's say you've got a whole group of duplexes, which means you have a pretty high residential, number of people living there. You're actually paying on a higher rate than the residential people are paying. So you're paying more taxes, and yet they won't provide that service to you.
Well, I'm glad you brought that out. Now, city, listen to John.
Explain to me why the commercial people who actually pay a higher rate get a lower level of service. Like, for example, we had an open ditch, which, by the way, as I understand it, is you're actually not supposed to have in the city. We had an open ditch in front of some duplexes, and we had to buy the pipe to enclose the ditch because they said, well, you're commercial and we don't do that. And we asked for a sidewalk. You're commercial. We won't do that. So all the little retired old ladies who live in this set of duplexes, they can't have a sidewalk because it's a commercial development. But yet commercials pay an actual higher rate than the residential do. So why is that?
Maybe they had other sidewalks they need to build first.
No, my point is they don't pay for any kind of improvement like that on a commercial piece of property, which includes duplexes.
Well, maybe that'll be changed under the new sidewalk investment.
No, it won't.
Well, you don't know, John.
I absolutely know it won't.
You just brought it up.
Yeah.
You're getting their attention right now.
Yeah, and guess what? That's more cost. That's more places for them to spend the money, which they don't want to do.
Well, let's keep talking about where else they're going to spend the money. The Mouse Creek Road, Paul Huff Parkway intersection. The Peerless Road, Paul Huff Parkway intersection. Peerless Road, 25th Street intersection.
Peerless Road and 25th. Haven't we just spent, Lord, I don't know, what did we spend, $1 million working on that interchange? They've redone the turning lanes. They've done all of that landscaping all up through there, and now we need more money spent there?
Well, they're saying Peerless Road and 25th Street intersection.
We just worked on that the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, let's keep going, John. Georgetown Road and 25th Street. We just worked on that one, too, did we not?
We did.
Okay. Atkinson Drive widening project. That's out by Cleveland State.
Certainly carrying a lot more traffic than it did a few years ago.
That one I can understand.
Highway, they're going to push the Tennessee Department of Transportation on the Highway 60 Georgetown Road widening project.
And wait a minute, they're going to push them.
Yeah.
That costs money
It's
to
a state,
push
it's
them.
a state route, isn't
No,
it?
my point is the city has to spend, this is one of the reasons they're justifying the tax increase. How in the hell does pushing the state to do something cost you more money?
I'm reading from the article. Now let's keep going.
All right.
John, you've got the vocabulary of Donald Trump. I'm going to get the boy. As a former Eagle Scout, I'm really disappointed in your language choice.
I'll work on HE double toothpicks. I'm sorry. You forget I'm a Methodist.
I don't want to get us reprimanded by the Boy Scouts of America for our show. You know,
Oh, by
we
the
got
way,
standards.
Didn't you think that was wonderful that Trump did go visit the Boy Scouts?
Well, every president goes.
No. Obama didn't go.
Well, he went. I think he went once. Or
No.
no, you're right. He sent a message. He
Didn't go. Anyway, addition of 12 new police officers in the next 2 years. Development of a crime suppression unit, whatever that is. Fire station number 6 in South Cleveland. A fire training center. New police equipment.
Let me ask you a question, though. The fire training center, the fire hall, those are capital outlays, right? So if you raise taxes and you use a capital outlay to justify raising taxes, what do you do after that capital outlay is paid for or financed?
You just get to keep the taxes.
You keep that's my point. You should never use capital outlays to justify a tax increase.
Well, that depends, actually, on whether or not, and I think this is the real potential criticism of that project, is whether or not you're using the tax increase to justify increasing your borrowing ability to finance the fire hall, as opposed to using it to pay for it. I'm actually much more comfortable with using it to pay for it,
Yes
and then
and no,
having that money available for other things.
But that, no.
That's a different thing.
That right. See,
The other
that,
thing,
let me stop though, Frank. And I'm not fussing at Franklin. That's a legitimate point, but that's a liberal and versus my conservative viewpoint on that. He's okay with them continuing to collect increased taxes and just allowing the government to decide how to spend that. I will tell you, if you really wanted to do this on capital outlays, you do it like the state of Georgia does. The people get to vote on every one of those projects, and they raise the taxes high enough to pay for that project. And then when that project is paid for, that tax goes back away. The government just doesn't get to go, great, now for the next 50 years, we get to keep all this increased taxes to play with, which is what Franklin just endorsed.
So you like the Georgia method?
Look, the Georgia method at least allows, the voters get to vote on whether they think that's a worthy project and whether they're willing to pay 2 or 3 cents or whatever it takes to pay for that project. But the best part about that system is that when the project is paid for, the tax goes back away. That's what has to happen. And so that's my complaint about this list. When you include capital projects in this list justifying a tax increase, what are you going to do with the extra money once those capital projects are paid for?
Well, we're going to get into that. The city would like to create a one-stop shop for transitions. I guess that's where you buy your license tags, pay your taxes. What else would you do there? Get permits.
Okay.
I mean, go one place instead of 3.
Well, where do they have any estimate of the increase in revenue? For example, they've just approved a bunch of new building right there at Paul Huff and Peerless. That's going to generate new taxes. Where are they showing us how much that's going to be?
Well, they're not during this article.
Of course they're not, because they want to increase our taxes.
Working on a plan to have 400 to 500 new residential units in the downtown area by 2025.
Mm-hmm.
What in the hell does what in the HE double toothpicks does the government have to do with increasing that many units in the downtown area?
Probably trying to revitalize the downtown area.
But my point is, so I'm going to spend taxpayer dollars so someone will build apartments down there?
What do you think you ought to buy the Cherokee Hotel with taxpayer dollars?
No.
What do you think should happen?
Look, I think that Cherokee Hotel, you could do some things like you can offer them tax incentives. You can actually give them discounts if they will. I'm okay with that. But guess what? No government wants to discount taxes. They always want to increase taxes. You want a developer to come in, make it more feasible for him to come in. Give him a delayed tax basis. We gave it to some of our plants to do that.
Well, I'm going on in this article. I'm going to finish it up, but I don't see anything about an indoor tennis court here.
Of course not. Of course not.
I see where they're going to take the 2 tennis courts in Deer Park and turn them into pickleball courts.
Because there's such a demand for pickleball.
Well, there's not a whole lot of people playing tennis, I'd say, over there.
Well, again, that's one of my points.
That's where I learned to play tennis.
I don't know. An idea has been floated to put indoor tennis courts out at Tinsley, but what they'll tell you is the Tinsley tennis courts have to have something done to them. My point simply is when you're building pickleball courts, you got plenty of money. Somehow I'm thinking that the people that are forced to stay in the shelter over on across from the old Beatty's Hardware, I'm not thinking they're worried about inability to play pickleball.
Well, maybe the pickleballers will donate some money to those that live in the shelter.
By the way, let's talk about the renters in the duplexes.
All right, let's talk about them.
All right, I don't know what the average rent is in Cleveland, but the other night we were sort of talking about this. Let's say that your rent is $700 a month. A 28% increase is right at $900. You go from $700 to about $896.
Are you going to do that on your apartments?
Well, I don't think you can.
Wait a minute. It's not a 28% increase in all costs associated with the development. It's a 28% increase in one cost associated with the development. That doesn't translate immediately to a 28% rent increase. That would be way more money than what you're talking about.
Twofold here. One, your taxes are a huge portion of your costs.
Okay.
And 2, my point simply is, if you're justifying 28%, then let's apply it to things people can understand. If your rent was $700 and your landlord said, I want to make, because right now in this analogy.
But you're suggesting that the result of that 28% tax increase is a 28% increase in rent, and that doesn't translate.
It doesn't translate directly, Franklin, but my point is.
It may, in fairness, translate to an increase in your rent, but not a 28%.
But Franklin, here's my point. In regards as a taxpayer, the government is my landlord. And so the city government is telling me they deserve or they want a 28% increase in my payments to them. So I'm simply translating it into something that everybody can understand. If you're living in a duplex and your landlord said, I want a 28% increase, your $700 rent goes to $890, I think, $4 or $5. So anybody out there, think about that. How would you react if your landlord increased your rent 28%? Well, the government here, when we talk about collecting taxes, they're our landlords effectively.
Do you think that the person that's living in the apartment would rather go buy something?
Absolutely.
Well, they'd still have 28% more to pay.
Well, that's another thing here. Look, the 28%, it also goes on all the commercial stores. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to raise their prices.
The only disagreement I have with John on this issue is, and while I respect his philosophical consistency about taxes, okay, all of the focus, in my opinion, ought to be on, is there a need? Do we want to pay the price to meet it? That's the question. Now, you can be generally against taxes, but that sort of avoids making the decisions that we're talking
All right,
about.
let's talk
now, hold
about
on, let me finish, okay? Now, I know if we go down this list, there'll be things on there, for example, John doesn't support. There may be things on there I don't support. I understand that. But that's where the analysis ought to be. Do we want these things? And if we want them, are we willing to pay for them? That's the issue. Now, we elect these people to make these decisions for us, and let's see what happens in the next election.
All right.
Do you have a wave of people who agree with John that we don't know these things and we don't want to pay this, and are they going to run for it?
You'll see a wave has already started.
Well, maybe we'll see. Maybe that will happen.
By the way, here's my point, Franklin, though. That's a legitimate comment that you just made. Tell me a single price that they attached to any of those items. Did they give us a single price, as in, if we do this item, it's this much increased taxes? If we do this item, it's increased taxes this much?
That's a fair thing.
So they don't give us any of that.
That's a fair thing to show up at those commission meetings and say, I'd like to know how much of this tax is supposed to go for that. But I don't recall. But I'm going to say this: I don't remember anybody who came to the commission meeting that's what they asked them. They showed up and said, "I'm opposed to it."
Let me say this, and this was at the end of the article. The scheduled projects and tentative projects have been influenced by Cleveland's growth of 16.196% residents since 1960 to around 45,000 people. It is expected the city's population will be 50,000 by 2020 and around 60,000 by 2030.
Well, you're also supposed to get an increase in tax revenue based on that. And by the way, Franklin, you said you want to, let's talk about the value. All right, the schools, for example. We just passed, they just got a bump up in the sales tax that goes directly to the schools. Mm-hmm. How much did that generate? How much did they get? And by the way, in the schools, and I'm not trying to pick on them, but the county already pays less, or spends less per pupil than the city, but all of their test scores are higher.
Hold on to those thoughts. We'll be right back. We have to take a break.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we don't just sell cars, we buy them. Bring your car, truck, or SUV down to Buy Here, Pay Here USA, and we'll give you a free appraisal with no obligation. We pay top dollar for most cars, so before you trade in your vehicle, come see us for an appraisal. At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we pay the most for your car. Visit Buy Here, Pay Here USA in Cleveland, Dayton, or Chattanooga, or go to buyheresellhere.com. That's buyheresellhere.com. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs and Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
Hey folks, Glenn here from U.S. Money Shops. If you think all pawn shops are dark and dreary, then you haven't been to U.S. Money Shops. From hard-to-find items to unique jewelry to the latest in electronics, we have it. And guns, we have a huge selection of guns in a variety of colors from a variety of manufacturers. And when you buy any gun at U.S. Money Shops, you get a box of ammo and a case absolutely free. So come see what I'm talking about. Any of our 12 U.S. Money Shops locations in Tennessee and Georgia. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Buy or sell or buy today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Financial Recovery, licensed and bonded collection agency, located right here in Cleveland, Tennessee. Give them a call at 423-473-7670. Small town service with big city results. A full service medical, commercial, retail, and individual collection service. Celebrating 10 years in business. Call Financial Recovery at 423-473-7670 to help you with your accounts receivable and past due invoices. Financial Recovery, 423-473-7670.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back in the studio, and
Let me tell you what your numbers are going to do, just if you want to end this. In 2013, to be collected taxes of the city were $18,473,000. 14, $19,145,000. 15, $19,146. Not much change. 16, $19,628,000.
That's uncollected taxes.
This is to be collected.
You said for 15 and so forth. So those are old ones, right?
Well, yeah, but the point is this is to be collected. They don't always collect all of this. Some people don't
That's
pay.
right. People don't pay.
This is to be collected. All right, so 2016, $19,628,000. So they've had a steady bump up around $500,000 a year. 2017, with this tax increase, $26,134,000. So you're talking about almost a $7 million per year increase based on to be collected revenue. $7 million more per year.
Mm-hmm. Now that makes sense. You can see that. You can feel that. How do you feel about that, Franklin?
It's the same analysis for me every time. Identify what we're going to do with it, and then let me make a decision whether I want to make that payment.
They gave you a list, and they didn't identify any of the costs associated with this. Now, somebody told me that the Pickleball League has volunteered to help subsidize the cost. I'm great with that. My only point here is I'm not sure we have a revenue problem. I think we have a spending problem. You know what? For example, they're touting this survey. Around 1,000 people out of 40-something thousand people participated in the survey. And guess what the survey said? Same complaint I'm making about this. The survey didn't say, are you willing to pay 2 cents more for X? What it said is, would you like to have this? Would you like to have that? That's a worthless survey. Because you know what? If you go to your kids, I'd ask anyone out there, go to your kids and say, would you like to have a new car? Would you like to go to California on vacation, Hawaii on vacation? You'll get a yes every time. If you said, hey, would you like to work for the next 5 years to pay for a trip right now to Hawaii? They'll go, no, I've got other things I probably want to do.
Okay. All right, moving along. The workhouse just opened, John. That's something new. That's a county workhouse.
Congratulations to Brian Smith for having it named after him. No, I'm serious. That was totally serious.
Well, I hope he doesn't mess up and something go wrong next year.
Brian doesn't mess up.
I know. Brian's a wonderful guy, but you know, it's almost costly sometimes when you name something after somebody and they're still living.
I have
nobody ever named anything after me. So.
Absolutely no concern whatsoever about Brian Smith's
I know.
legacy.
Brian is a wonderful guy.
Solid as a rock.
Brian's done a good job. He's solid. You're right. So did Kenneth Tinsley with Tinsley Parks. He was still alive when they named it, and that worked out well. Anyway, congratulations to Brian. I think there's a new general in the White House, isn't there?
Yes, thank goodness.
You think they needed the general in there?
They need something.
What's wrong?
And I'm not talking about policy here, views on an issue or something. That operation needed some discipline appointed to it, and I hope that General Kelly succeeds famously in that role.
Well, I'm just glad to see that Franklin is not like a lot of his fellow Democrats who are labeling this as a military coup.
Well, actually, most Democrats that I've seen nationally and otherwise have applauded that decision.
Actually, you have House Democrat members of the House of Representatives that have actually used the word, this is a military coup, and that he shouldn't be there because he's a former military person.
That's not the prevailing view in the Democratic Party.
I didn't say it was prevailing.
Well,
I said
okay,
you have
John.
elected House members of the House of Representatives, Democrats, who are claiming that he shouldn't be there because he's apparently military people should just go away after they retire.
I think General Kelly is a well-regarded source. He did some things right away, which if the president will stick to, will benefit the country and Donald Trump.
You think General Kelly will learn anything from Donald Trump?
Well, he has probably already learned more about how Twitter works than he ever wanted to know as a general. But they have got to instill some chain of command in the White House to succeed.
At least the word coming out is the first thing he did was that he did insist on Scaramucci leaving. He also
another good decision.
He also has instituted apparently an actual a process to get access to the president. One of the problems is, and this has been true for all administrations, the desire. The point here is how well you deal with that desire. But the desire has always been to get your opinion to the president. And so there's been a scramble to be the last person to talk to him before a decision is made. Kelly apparently is streamlining that, so there will be a way to go.
That's the very reason why a functional and talented chief of staff is vital to a well-running White House. Now, where's the challenge going to be?
All the press, bad press.
Well, a lot of that can be managed by simply not having so much chaos going on around.
I'll tell you what I would manage if I was Trump. I wouldn't have any press. I wouldn't have anybody. I wouldn't talk to them.
The challenge, well, because he sits down and does interviews whenever he wants to.
That's right. He can tweet what he wants.
Okay, well, that's the challenge is going to be how you impose that chain of command when people who are wanting to get to the White House are your son-in-law and your daughter, and so forth.
The stories coming out right now are that the son and the daughter-in-law have both agreed to follow the same protocol that General Kelly is establishing. Your biggest problem, Steve, will be what the president does. Will he allow this to hold? Will he insist on there being some control? Because
I think it's all about I think what this is all boiling down to is they're trying to get rid of all the liberal Democrats and all the people that are leaking everything that's still in the chain of command.
Well, the problem is, though,
Am I right or wrong?
Well, yes and no. Here's one problem for that argument. Scaramucci, for example, in saying the very thing you just said, turned around and leaked all kinds of information against the guy he didn't
and
like.
finally acknowledged that the source of his leak was the president.
Well, and this is kind of interesting. Scaramucci, one of his biggest nemesis was Reince Priebus. So what's really interesting about this is he finally, by leaking and by smearing, he gets rid of Reince Priebus, and then the guy that Trump taps to replace Reince Priebus immediately gets rid of him.
Look. I'm not talking about policy here.
Yeah.
Okay, not your views on an issue. They had one of the worst 10 days I can recall any White House having in my lifetime.
10 days?
Yes, it's been awful.
It has.
Well, let me say this, though.
It's worse than Obama?
Two communications directors in 10 days.
Oh, that's all
Hold on. No, I'm serious, okay? The president went off of his speech, okay? Whether you like it or not, you end up with the Boy Scouts of America effectively reprimanding him. He goes off of his speech that's there. You end up with the police chiefs reprimanding the president. All right? You end up with sitting United States senators condemning the president on the air and saying that all other Republicans need to be telling him that he's way off base and wrong. You had the flame out on the Obamacare vote. This is all in a 10-day period. And I will tell you
flame out on the Obamacare vote. What does that mean?
It went down, didn't it? They didn't pass anything, did they?
No, they're still working on that. And I think you'll see that come back.
Okay, well, except that it doesn't appear that Mitch McConnell has much interest in bringing it back up.
What about what Trump's been doing when all this has been going on?
Has he been doing?
Has he been doing anything good?
Well, there's some indication that
he's actually been very successful in rolling back a lot of the things Obama had done that he did extra
He's
legally.
had to spend the whole time in the first part of his fixing what's wrong with what Obama
Steve, look,
did.
I'm on your side on this, but the problem is he does walk all over his message. A lot of these good things that he's doing don't get any press coverage because someone like Scaramucci goes out and has a cuss-filled tirade.
Now, notice what I said, though. I didn't say anything about the president's opinion on any issue here. Okay. I'm talking about the functioning of the administration, which we all have an interest in.
But let me qualify one thing with you, though, Franklin. People like me and you and all these people in Washington, D.C., we keep up with this. We pay attention to this. Average citizens don't. And a lot of the things Trump does, people relate to. Even these things that we criticize and that the senators criticize, a lot of normal people look at and go, I understand. I agree with him. So one of the problems is the disconnect between people who watch this 24/7 and work in this and just regular people who are going to work every day.
I think anybody who gets as much criticism from a negative press as Trump does, from the ones that are the sore losers about Hillary Clinton and all the crap that's been going on, the Russian investigation. You're closing your eyes like you're tired of hearing it. We're all tired of hearing it, Frank.
The public is really tired of the Russia.
It's not that.
Would you just do me one favor? Please tell all your Democratic friends just to shut up for a while, and let's try to have a government run quietly and see if it runs better.
I'm going to say this the only way I know how.
Go ahead.
The President of the United States is 95% responsible for all the bad press he's gotten in the last 6 months because of his own lack of discipline.
That's not true.
It is true.
No,
it is true.
I disagree with that.
I mean, how do you declare war on the most loyal person you've ever had in your administration publicly on Twitter and not expect to get bad press?
Look,
nobody's been more loyal to him than Jeff Sessions.
For example,
Nobody.
Franklin, here, let me get the biggest scandal,
and he's
to be
just
honest.
Tried to destroy him.
The biggest scandal right now.
Has Jeff done everything he should be done?
Pretty much. Everything that Donald Trump wanted
Franklin,
him to do, he's been doing.
Here's the point. I don't disagree with you that Trump shoots himself in the foot a lot of the time. But here's the problem with what you're saying. The biggest scandal going on right now, the really dangerous scandal, is this House IT scandal involving involving 24 Democratic House members and people that have now sneaked off and embezzled money back to Pakistan, who had access to national security secrets. And the news media, for example, has not played a single story on that.
Are you talking about Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
Debbie Wasserman Schultz. My point here is, you're right, he shoots himself in the foot. But if the press was objective, he would get some bad press on that, but he wouldn't get the 95% of the airtime devoted to that when it ought to be devoted to a real scandal like Debbie Wasserman Schultz that is actively being downplayed by the national media.
What's going on with her?
Well, I have read about 10 stories this week, so I don't know what he's talking about.
It's been going on since February, Franklin.
Yeah,
they were shamed into reporting on it when they actually arrested the guy.
Here's the thing, John. You go on and on about this, and the facts are you don't know any of these facts.
His family's raked in $4 million since 2007 in employment
Here's what I
in
know.
24
This
House
person's
Democrats.
been indicted, but he didn't get indicted for any of the things that John's been railing about.
Because they had to indict him with something to keep him from leaving the country, Franklin.
So you're
while
saying
they
that those were phony indictments?
No, they were legitimate, but they were the only thing at the moment that they could get up there to stop him from leaving the country.
Power of attorney? He was trying to get a power of attorney signed so they can get his hands on some money.
Tell me why, Franklin,
to his family.
The man in
He got
February
indicted for signing a mortgage application incorrectly.
They indicted him on what they could indict him on to stop him from leaving the country because he had wired $300,000 to Pakistan. His wife fled the country in April with $12,000 in cash stuffed in her suitcase, and he has been transferring all of his assets to Pakistan. He actually owes money to a Hamas-related financier out of Iraq, out of Iran. And here's the question for you, Franklin. In February, the Capitol Police and the FBI blocked him any access from the House system over national security concerns. Debbie Wasserman Schultz not only did not fire him, she simply transferred him to another job title, kept him on the payroll until last Monday.
Why is there no investigation?
The factual allegation that he made there has one error in it.
What?
It is not true that he was blocked by the FBI and the Capitol Police. He was blocked by the Capitol Police only.
And then the FBI joined the investigation and are now involved. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz didn't fire him until they arrested him. As a matter of fact, she threatened the chief of the Capitol Hill Police to give back some of the evidence.
What is the problem with her wanting to get his computer?
She doesn't want him to look at it.
Right. She's really just demanding
that
she gets this back.
Now, it's already been smashed with a hammer.
Okay.
He smashed it with a hammer.
First of all, here's what actually happened.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear this.
This is what's actually or factually reported.
Okay.
What happened is that the person left a home and was renting it out to somebody. Okay? Renting it out to this person who was renting the property from him finds in a basement there
in the garage
some hard drives that appear to have been smashed.
That are labeled U.S. government
and that
property.
appear to be U.S. government property. Okay? So he turns them over to the government.
American.
Okay.
A retired Marine whose wife is in the Navy.
Okay, good man.
So as far as I have been able to glean from the stories that I have found, thus far, nobody has determined anything about what's on those hard drives.
Because
whether
Debbie
they have
Wasserman
anything
Schultz
to do
is
with national
demanding that
security
they
or
not
not.
open them and look at them. And by the way, that's not the laptop she's after. The laptop she's after, they found hidden in a crevice in the Capitol building.
Okay, well, I haven't seen that one yet.
That was the one she threatened the Capitol Hill Police over, was a computer laptop that was hidden in a crevice in the wall of the Capitol building.
I also
do you
seen
think
that she threatened them.
I'll read it to you. I brought it in 2 months ago when she did it. She did it in May. It was in a hearing on his budget, and she said, "I want my." And I'm paraphrasing, so I'll bring you the exact quote. She said, "I want that laptop back." He replied that it was part of an active, ongoing...
I'm not
wait
here.
a minute. You started this. Let me finish. He replied that it was part of an active, ongoing investigation, and he would not return it. And she said, "Well, if it's not returned, I think you could expect consequences."
That's right. I heard her say that.
And that was in reference to
I'm
his
not
budget.
here to defend Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but what I am saying to you is, so far, what I've seen on this reporting on this issue, and I read a lot of it the last couple of weeks.
Almost all of it from the Daily Caller, because no one else has been doing it up until last week.
Let's talk about some other investigations.
Okay.
What's going on? You know, Jeff Sessions hasn't put any investigations towards any of the things that need to be investigated. There's a lot of burning.
Such as what?
Well, how about Hillary Clinton? Let's go back to Hillary Clinton and her emails and some of the things.
He's not investigating it?
Well, maybe that's what Trump is trying to figure out.
He has actually this week announced some new.
He's fixing to announce some outcomes.
Okay.
But you say that.
No. Here's what I'm saying.
How do I know he's not investigating?
Here's what I'm saying to you. We have an independent Justice Department for a reason.
Okay.
We do now
Because
that Trump's in office.
Because we don't want the
Loretta
President of the
Lynch.
United States telling the Justice Department who to investigate.
You mean you don't want a attorney general telling the FBI how to characterize an investigation, not to call it an investigation, but to call it a review?
What'd she call that? It was not an investigation. It was
a matter. A matter.
What's a matter?
Y'all get really worried about labels more than anybody ever saw.
Well, what's the matter?
You never pay attention to substance.
Well,
if they're investigating, they're investigating.
But frankly,
who cares what they call it?
Well, everybody cares because
they
the
don't,
FBI
really.
doesn't do matters; they do investigations. And the matter was actually a talking point directly from the Clinton campaign, which she probably got from Bill Clinton when she had her secret meeting on the tarmac.
Now you got a new FBI director today. Okay, so he can investigate whatever he wants to if he thinks that's appropriate.
Do you think that Debbie Wasserman Schultz should be investigated more than the Russians?
More than the Russians?
Yes.
No.
Why not?
Because the Russians haven't attempted to undermine our electoral process.
You mean like the Ukrainians did?
Not that I've seen thus far.
Actually, you're wrong. The Ukrainians, we know, sent government information to the Hillary Clinton.
Government agencies have
no,
weighed in
you're
on
wrong
this,
about that. 3 did. 19 did not. Your people had to admit that was an actual lie.
The vice president says it. Do you believe him?
Franklin,
do you believe him?
19 didn't say it.
Do you believe Mike Pence?
Mike Pence didn't say that.
Yes, he did.
No, he said that 19 people agreed on one thing, but not on the managing.
Mike Pence says.
I'll bring you the quotes. I'll bring you the quotes.
He agrees with our intelligence agencies that the Russians attempted.
You're right, but not 19.
Do you believe him or not?
Listen to me. You're playing semantics.
I'm not playing
semantics. It is
semantics.
not 19,
tell
and
the
you know
truth.
it. It's you tell the truth.
Yes
or no? Did 19? Yes or no?
Happened.
Did 19 intelligence agencies say it?
The only person
Did
who
19
doesn't
say
believe
it?
is Donald
Did
Trump.
19 say it, Franklin? Did
Yeah,
19?
yes.
You're wrong. You are absolutely wrong. Only 3 said it. Only 3 said it, and your people have lied about that consistently. It was not 19. It was 3 agencies.
John,
3
how
agencies,
many
not
Republican
19.
senators have
You're
to
not
say
gonna answer
they
my specific
answer
question,
my
are you?
question, John? Okay, let's say I'm wrong and it's only 3.
It's 3.
Let's
Then
say
I'll
that's
quit
okay.
arguing with
Let's
you
say-
if you are wrong. Thank you for
my
admitting
God,
it.
you're right, John. Okay, even though you're wrong. But you're right.
Show
But
me the 19.
answer the dang question,
Which
John.
question,
Do
Franklin?
you believe they tried to meddle in it or not?
Yes,
that's
I've
really
always
the
said.
question.
Yes, I've always said that.
Okay, then
But
why
that
are
has
you hung
nothing-
up on it?
Because
that
it has
number of
nothing
people?
to do with
Why
collusion.
you want
It
the
has
smoke
nothing to
screen
do with
instead
collusion.
of-
Because it
I
has
didn't
nothing.
say collusion.
But you're
Did I say
conflating
that?
them. You're conflating them,
Hey.
and you know
I am
it.
not
And the
conflating
news
anything.
media is
I'm
conflating them.
telling you, our intelligence agencies reached one conclusion.
How many
and
agencies?
Is there a United States agency, John, who reached a different conclusion?
There were only
Is there
3.
one who concluded they didn't try to?
How
do
long
it?
does it take to
3.
figure out that the Russians did
Answer
it?
my question.
Try to be factual. You're an attorney. You know you have to be factual in court. Only 3 agencies reached that conclusion,
What were
not
the
19.
agencies, John? Tell us who they were.
Franklin, I'll bring it to you
Tell
next
us who
week.
they were.
I
You're
had
so
it. I had it
confident
a
of
couple
this.
of weeks ago.
Did the
Your
National
own
Security
people,
Agency
your own
determine
people
it?
under testimony had to admit that it was
John,
only 3.
answer my question.
What?
Did the CIA conclude that?
Yes.
Did the National Security Agency conclude
As I remember
that?
it, they did too.
Did the FBI conclude that?
I don't.
Wait a minute. Did
I
we
don't know that the FBI did.
Did we conclude that they did it here in this room? The
My
Russians.
point is,
The
Franklin,
Russians
be
did.
accurate
They
in
did
what you
something
say.
wrong.
Did the Senate
Did the
Foreign
Russians
Intelligence Agency conclude
No,
that?
they didn't.
They did.
Did they conclude that Trump did anything wrong?
I didn't say he did anything wrong.
Well, then how come the investigation keep leading to the Trumps?
Primarily because the president keeps pouring gas on the fire.
Oh, it's his problem.
Yeah. Why does he keep saying all these nice things about this murderous dictator, as John has called him over the years?
Who?
Vladimir Putin.
You mean the one that just expelled almost 800 of our people over the sanctions bill that the president's signing?
The president actively asked not to be passed? That one?
All right.
Why did he do that?
No, he said he didn't want it passed because the way it was written, if he wanted to pull back on Russia, if there was something in his negotiations that helped, he didn't have the ability the way it was written. That is the difference. Not anything else.
Many
Not anything
Republicans
else.
vote for it.
Not anything else. Not anything else.
That's your position? It's a mystery to everybody else.
No, it's not.
All right, let me read it to you. James Clapper, Obama's guy, said, referring to the 19 statement, he said, jumped on me. This is a quote. As you know, the IC was a coordinated product from 3 agencies, the CIA, NSA, and the FBI, not all 17 components of the intelligence community. That's James Clapper's direct quote, Franklin. Are you satisfied?
No.
James Clapper, your guy, Obama's guy.
Listen to what you just read, John. He's referring to a specific report that day. He didn't say these other agencies didn't agree with that. He didn't say that they haven't investigated it. He said the ICI was developed from those 3 sources.
What he said was those are the only 3 that came to the conclusion, Franklin.
No, he didn't say that.
All right, quick question. We're right out of time. Should Trump pull the insurance from the Congress? Should he pull their insurance?
He doesn't have the ability to
Yes,
do
he
that.
does.
No, he doesn't.
They get 70% of their premiums
I
paid,
don't dis-
just like anybody. That
I
would
don't
be on
disagree
Obamacare.
with that
Should he stop
All right,
it?
Franklin.
Do I think that their insurance ought to more model what's available to the American
Yes.
people? Yes.
All right.
That's a different question from
Okay.
what you just said.
Then should he stop the 70%?
I don't think
That
he
they
has
get.
that legal ability. Is all I'm
Yes, he
saying.
does. Obama did that illegally. As a matter of fact, courts have actually ruled that he didn't have the authority to do it, so Trump can fix that immediately.
As an American citizen, I want.
And by the way,
Okay.
James Clapper in that
Steve, who controls the Congress?
Okay.
The Republicans
Nobody
do.
does.
Franklin, James Clapper, later in that same hearing, actually corrected Senator Al Franken when he said the 17 agencies again. And Clapper said, as I pointed out in my statement, there were only 3 agencies that directly involved in this assessment. Plus, Franklin said, but all 17 signed on to that. Well, no, we didn't go through that process. This was a special situation. So James Clapper is saying you're wrong.
Did any government agency conclude the Russians did not meddle in the
3 of
election?
them did. I just read it to
any,
you.
John, any.
3 of them did.
Did any government agency conclude that assessment was wrong?
Do I have to explain that any and the word 3 go together?
No, those are different questions,
Let's
John.
see.
They're totally different questions, and you know what they
All
are.
right, let's clarify something here. Do we believe that the Russians meddled in the elections?
Yes.
Okay, you believe that. I believe that. John, you believe
Okay.
that too, don't you?
So should we be investigating that?
Well, how long does
Absolutely.
it take to
We
investigate
should
it?
investigate it.
A lot longer than 6 months.
But we
sometimes.
should also be investigating what the Ukrainian government did.
Right.
How do you know they're not?
And
How do you know this?
Hey,
Well,
should we?
This is what's crazy.
All right, no,
this
wait a
has
minute.
nothing
You're right.
to do
You're
with
right. Let's follow up on you.
This is nothing more than a naked attempt
No.
to try to blow smoke.
Let me
over
tell
this.
you why I don't know. You're right. I don't know they're not. You know why I don't know? Because the major news medias have spent 95% of their time talking about the Russia investigation as it relates to the Trump, but have said absolutely nothing about the Ukrainian investigation as it relates to Clinton. So you may be right. They may be investigating. But my point is the news media is not an unbiased arbiter
Well, that's
anymore.
for sure, since we saw what happened with Fox this week.
What happened?
They got sued by one of their own commentators for slandering him and making up quotes they attributed to him in a story that Fox later had to retract because
Who's he
it,
talking
quote,
about?
didn't meet their standards.
Who are you talking about?
The one where they claimed
We didn't
that
see that
some
on-
Democratic staffer was murdered because he had the Hillary Clinton emails.
Well, I mean, that they probably shouldn't have gone down that line. Just because about 60 people who have had intersections with the Clintons have, shot themselves 4 or 5 times in a suicide, or been run over by a car as they stood in the middle of the street, or was on a plane crash that, only killed them. That's just coincidence. Okay, so let it go.
Do you think Hillary's guilty of anything?
I don't know. Feel free to investigate. I, unlike the Republican Party, encourage you to investigate.
I wish we could. Hey, I love it. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin